Queensland new Premier will announce his cabinet reshuffle later this morning. It's fresh from announcing a goal to slash emissions by 75% below the state's 2005 levels. That's by 2035. The new target is ramping up pressure on the federal government to push its own 2035 goal above 70%. Joining me now, Michael Wright, Electrical Trades Union National Secretary. Thanks for your time. You've expressed some support for this. Do we need to base it, though, on something a bit more concrete on what the states are doing? The federal government shouldn't just be following the state, should it? It needs to assess what's possible and won't disrupt the economy as well.
Look, thanks for having us on the show. It's from our perspective, in terms of what our workers need and what the industry needs is certainty. So we had 8.5 years of state governments going one way, federal government going the other, and what it led to was an underinvestment, and then that underinvestment led to an underinvestment in skills and training. Like we were talking to employers that whole time, why aren't they putting on more apprentices? Why aren't they putting on trainees? And it was because the reason they always came back with, we don't know what work we have in the pipeline. We can't commit to a 4-year apprenticeship if we don't know that there's work coming down the way. So what we're now desperate to keep, what we've had for the last 18 months was really the states and territories and the federal government starting to get on the same page. And we don't want to see that policy coordination go up in smoke. We need to have
the headlines. Yeah, okay. The headline, sorry, just to jump in, splashed across the Australian this morning is go harder, unions to the federal government. How blunt is your message? Because the federal government's approach has been, let's figure out what is achievable and then we have our target, rather than here's a target and let's hope we get there. Because while you say let's push for certainty, a lot of governments set targets and there's a big grey area of we hope we get there through green hydrogen, whatever it might be. A target isn't certainty unless it actually happens, is it?
Absolutely. And when we look at all of the limiters that are cropping up with the energy transition, whether it's supply chains, whether it's finance, increasingly looming large is the workforce shortage. We've got government projections that we're going to be short 32,000 electricians by 2030. That's just one trade, a particularly critical trade for what we need to do. But this is why we need to have the certainty. Now, yes, I've seen what the headlines say today. I also know what I said. And what I said is that we needed to have a consistent government policy across the board. Now, in terms of ambition, what I would say is that when we talk to our kindred unions around the world, when we talk to our employers with operations around the world, there is a race on in the green steel space. There is a race on in green manufacturing, in green metals. So if we are not being as ambitious as we can, we are going to lose that race.
So when you say as ambitious as we can and yet you're still talking about job shortages, government's spruiking a lot of free TAFE courses, tens of thousands. Are they not doing the right areas? Are they not being prescriptive enough about what these courses are? Because if that forecast is still for 2030, it seems to me the government must be getting it wrong on priorities for the free TAFE courses.
Look, we've had a temporary shortage of electricians for a bit over 30 years now, and that has all the chances of it being supercharged over the next 27 years as the country moves to net zero. The government has made good investments, good down payments in terms of improving electrical training in Australia, but it's not sufficient. We're not going to get where we need to be. We are not going to have the workforce to build the transition unless we, across all levels of government, double down on investment in training, double down on investment in supporting apprentices. Okay,
so you're still saying short, even though the government's been spruiking that element. What about green jobs replacing the existing ones as part of this transition? The images we've been showing here, solar panels, windmills as well. Wind farms, I should say. Windmills is a bit more old-fashioned, isn't it? We're not really making these things in Australia, are we?
Look, there are opportunities, particularly around the wind space, for there to be manufacturing in Australia. Again, it gets to that coordination problem. But when we look at the amount of work coming down the pipeline, when we talk about the potential of retrofitting over 5 million homes from gas to electricity, that will have permanent impacts on reducing cost of living in the long term. That's where we are not looking at any shortage of work in the electrical trades for the next 3 decades. We wouldn't be having a shortage of 32,000 electricians by 2030 if there wasn't enough work.
Michael Wright, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.